Welcome back to The Comfy Chairs, a podcast from 123 Limited. This is your host, Kate. Purpose at Work predicts if employees will stay or quit their jobs. That's the headline from a 2022 Great Place to Work article, and one reason why leaders should be concerned with how well their teams know, understand, and resonate with their business's purpose. Lack of connection, significance, and enjoyment at work directly impact performance and impede engagement. And to meet this need, leaders can cultivate skills that allow them to identify, communicate, and weave purpose into every aspect of the team's responsibilities. My guest today is a brand strategist who says his purpose is guiding brands to unlock their greatest potential for growth and impact in the lives of their customers, communities, and the world. He understands that purpose serves a vital role in business success, that company identity, strategy, and profit depend on knowing your why, and that businesses can do good and do well. Chase, welcome to the Comfy Chairs. Thank you for joining me. Let's go ahead and take a moment so that you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Glad to be here and appreciate you having me. So I guess where to begin? Based here in Manhattan Beach, California. Been here for a number of years. It's been quite an interesting roundabout journey to where I am today. I think different seasons, different chapters of life.
Mm-hmm.
But to kind of put it concisely, where I am now is not where I started. I started my career actually in entertainment and filmmaking as an independent filmmaker, writing, directing, producing commercials, films, TV, which was awesome. Loved the craft, didn't love the business side of it, which can be a little bit rough and cutthroat. But I think the one through line throughout kind of my life and career is just a love for storytelling. And I have the great ability to be able to do that with brands and businesses and entrepreneurs and thought leaders, under the umbrella of, my agency, Vanquish Media Group, and the coaching and consulting I get to do.
Well, we love stories around here, so I'm looking forward to how that'll connect to everything we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So we're talking about purpose, and I think it's always good to kind of start with the why this and not something else.
Mm-hmm.
So why should people care about purpose or being purpose driven?
It's a great question. I feel like it's almost like a setup. It's like, why not?
Right?
Is that, yeah. Why should we care about purpose? I mean, look, this is something, why wouldn't we choose a path of being able to align our personal and professional lives, of work and life, of profit and purpose, to do good and do well? All of those things that seemingly are, sometimes seem to be asynchronous, but really are not mutually exclusive. You can achieve both. And I think we're at this point in time right now where we've reached this really incredible point in generation and history where we have more opportunities for us to pursue than ever before. We have the ability to kind of choose our own path and our own destiny. More people are taking risks and betting on themselves versus kind of the typical job 9 to 5, which is also fine. But, we spend how many hours of our day, of our week doing work? And I've met too many people down the road, probably my parents included, friends, family members who look back many, many, many years later, and even throughout, understand that they are not fulfilled, content, even miserable, dare I say, in their day-to-day jobs and bemoan it, but don't really take any action to change it up, to take a leap of faith, to find something that is more inspiring for them. Worst case, you get to later the years in life and you're faced with these regrets of what if. I love someone shared with me a great paradigm in which to kind of think of your present self. I think it's hard to evaluate yourself in your current moment. There's blind spots, there's a lack of objectivity. But if you can step outside of yourself, and how would you view yourself through your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self, right? So kind of the, awe-inspired eyes of a young kid, trying to figure out what they want to do and be in the world and the impact they want to have. And then, of course, kind of the wisdom in the later seasons of life as an 80-year-old, looking back and saying, hey, do I feel like I followed my purpose? Did I spend my years doing something I could be proud of and doing it the right way? Um, so, that's a high level assessment of why purpose, but I think every single person listening and beyond has the capability to achieve that. Doesn't mean it's always easy. Doesn't mean it's always simple, but it's certainly worth the squeeze.
I hear you talking about purpose like that it's something greater beyond self. Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a sense of purpose, a sense of, those who serve in the military, a sense of duty, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think always goes to something greater than oneself.
Okay.
I think, for me, it is to help serve and guide others in their journey. My purpose is to help others find theirs in a weird,
Yeah.
right? And connect with that purpose and help them translate that into the life and business they've always been seeking. But again, greater than myself. I think if you're singularly focused on a self-fulfilling purpose, I think that's a little bit limiting. I think it's a little more ego-driven. And I think you'll very quickly find that doesn't fulfill you as much as you think it might. So I do think it inherently is something greater than oneself.
So I'd like to give you a little bit of a differing perspective on that. It's possible, yes, kind of depending. But if I think about talking about like tools that are purpose made,
Mhm.
it's what I am made for. What am I here to do?
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, that implies a certain belief system and having been made or designed or what have you. But I think if we can recognize that I may have a thing that I'm made to do, a work, a
Mhm.
product, a process, an impact. It is self focused, granted, but it's about finding your place in the world. And I think we're very much, it's little nuances. I think we're talking about the same thing with slightly different language.
No, I think you're spot on. I look, I think it absolutely emanates from an intimate personal pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
You have to dig deep within and be vulnerable and honest with yourself in order to find that purpose in the first place. That is
Yeah,
not something anyone can tell you. That is not something that you can read in a book. That's something that you have to discover within yourself. So absolutely, I think the discovery and pursuit of that purpose is inherently personal. What is
mm-hmm.
what is gonna what is fulfilling for you? What lights you up? What gives you meaning in your own life? I simply think that the strength of that purpose, oftentimes, maybe not for everyone, lends itself to again a greater good, a bigger picture than oneself. And I'm not talking about. I think people get a little bit intimidated when they hear purpose, especially in business, right? Does that mean save the world and end climate change and social
Yeah.
injustice? And no, that's not. I mean, look, certainly there are people that have that mission. I'm not on the front lines of those issues, although I do my best to try to support them in my own way, in my own lane. And for me, it's a proxy because many of my clients are folks like that have a great cause, whether it's a nonprofit or for profit. So by helping serve them reach more people and more impact, there's kind of a little bit of a proxy impact there. But it doesn't have to be this existential world saving thing. It can be
Agreed.
so close to home and intimate. It can be simply providing a better quality and balance of life for yourself and your family, for your team members, for the community. Start small. I think just understanding where you can honestly make an impact and walk that talk can be incredibly enriching. And who knows, maybe you'll continue to kind of expand upon that. But I'd certainly start with something achievable rather than talking the talk, and it's just a little bit
Yeah.
of, hot air and hard to live up to.
Yeah. This is a great segue, Chase. Thank you, because I do want us to spend like a good bulk of our conversation talking about kind of what does it take to uncover individual purpose, team purpose, so on and so forth. But before that, I'd like there to be a little bit of context around it. You know, in my experience, purpose is one of those words that does sometimes get thrown around in a business setting when we're talking about things like mission, vision, values, strategy. It can become kind of background noise to those discussions. And I think it's important before we get into the uncovering it to distinguish it from some of those other kind of 25-cent words, if I can be a little tongue in cheek, that get used in business talk a lot.
Yes.
So how is it different from, mission, vision, value, strategy, et cetera,
Yeah.
or how does it relate to those, in your opinion?
Excellent question. Yeah. I believe that, purpose is really the foundation, the core of all those things.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the work that I do with clients, with organizations that have been around for 20, 30 years, or those just starting out. It always begins at a very deep personal level in terms of developing and identifying their brand and their purpose. Obviously a big proponent of, the Golden Circle and Simon Sinek and how he's kind of popularized, start with why, right? Which I certainly believe in. Start with why and certainly how and what. But for me and where I like to begin things is at that core of purpose, because without that, I just don't feel you're going to have that passion, that enthusiasm, and that clarity, quite frankly, to answer the rest of those questions you just mentioned: mission, vision, values. So purpose is kind of that, again, that greater good, that greater why we do, what we truly believe in, and in the business case, what we believe in beyond the bottom line. And I think that becomes, to use another cliche, a bit of your North Star, a bit of your strategic compass. But I also think that, again, in this crowded, competitive landscape we live in, purpose can be the ultimate positioning. It can be the ultimate differentiator. When most people are trying to race and vie for lowest price or best service, or some of these finite binary qualities, there can only be a few folks that win in terms of price or product or service or some of those traditional sort of values. But purpose is something that connects with people on a deeper emotional level, which is how people buy, is how people trust, is how people become loyal to a brand. So starting with purpose is essential, knowing that. And then from there, your mission is how we are going to go about tactically achieving and making good on that purpose, right? Our mission is what we are going to do, the things we are going to do as a business, as a function, as an organization, to stay on that course and do our best to make good on that purpose. The vision, similarly, is if we continue on this mission with this purpose in mind, where do we envision ourselves to be and the world to be in 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it might be. Values, same thing, are simply kernels of that purpose, right? What are the things that we value and honor and will abide by in pursuit? So I think all these things are kind of subtext to that overarching purpose.
I like talking about them as ways to bring purpose to life, to give us language to talk about it, to reflect what the core purpose is, and whatever that core thing, if your values, if your vision, if the strategies and plans that you set don't reflect back to that, then you have all this other work that you need to do. North Star is such a great way to think about it because it's something I can always point to and know that's there. But it's also, this is the template for everything that we're doing. Again, semantically, we could probably go back and forth for a while around mission versus purpose. Those things are the driving factors for whatever else comes after. And if you stray from that, that's where we see people struggling. And I think that's true in businesses. I think it's also true in our personal lives. When I was getting ready for our time today, Chase, I went through and read some of the things I found at Vanquish Media's sites and things that you've published yourself. And I found a phrase that I really liked. What you wrote was purpose should inform everything you do, from the products you create to the way you interact with your customers. It's the guiding light that sets your brand apart and resonates with those who share your values. So you've kind of captured all of that. It's the work, it's the product, it's the values, it's what we help people align to. So 100% totally agree. And I think this is where we can ask ourselves the question, how do we go about uncovering purpose? And then I think it's good to ask, is there a difference when we talk about the necessary steps and actions to finding purpose when we're talking about a business's purpose versus an individual's?
Mhm. Yeah, I think, look, the process in which you arrive at it, I think is different from everybody. For me, I know that it came at a point of a bit of a low point in my personal life and my professional life and career. Um, I think sometimes when we experience that hardship or that struggle, it's kind of we're forged by the fire, so to speak. Through that adversity, we find out what we're really made of or what is really most important to us. Um, I had lost the best friend and mentor. I had going through,
Mm.
financial struggles. We went from arguably our best, most productive year in business to kind of almost getting leveling out around COVID time. It was really just an existential shakeup in my life in every sense of the word. And I found myself grasping for what am I doing this all for? Do I want to just completely hang this up and start something new? And um, you know, it was scary. You're kind of in this void. And I had to, and certainly with the help of some other, mentors and guidance and reading and therapy and all this, had to really kind of ask those tough questions, right? Um, what was it that gave me joy? What was it that I felt was my truest calling? What allowed me to feel like I was truly in flow? Um, Something I could be proud of. And um, that was the first time I think I really sat with it and, did my best to come up with um, some clarity. And I'll tell you, it evolves, right? It's not a singular statement you
Yes.
print and laminate and put it on the wall. It's funny. I'm like looking to my right. I have like Post-its of things that I've written over time, and some of them are shifting, some of them are different, right?
Hmm.
Uh, my where it came to be initially was it's funny. I used to consider it call it like what's your unique brilliance, right? Is to help empower and inspire people to discover passion, purpose, and clarity in their lives, right? So that's kind of more of a personal fulfillment. It's kind of evolved, right? And how do you apply that to a
Hmm.
business sense, like you said? And from a business sense is similar to that same sentiment, but how can I serve others? Um, find that passion, that purpose, that clarity when applied to creating a life and a career and a business that they can be proud of, right? That breathes life into their world. So much like the path that I was on, even it's something I'm hoping to be able to provide for others in their journey.
Hmm. I'm curious, when you work with clients, you're not trying to recreate crisis, an existential shakeup. I love that term for them. You don't necessarily want them to have that distress. So without that, how do you go about guiding somebody through that process to uncover their brand's purpose, their company's purpose?
Yeah, I think honestly, it it comes down to creating a safe space to have a real and honest and vulnerable conversation.
Hmm.
uh, to really kind of look in the mirror and say, all right, what's working, what's not, what am I missing, what am I enjoying, what am I not? And honestly, it's oftentimes an interview and a conversation with multiple stakeholders. It shouldn't be just kind of, especially for a large organization, shouldn't be just a singular person and singular voice imposing kind of their purpose on the rest of them. Now, I do think there's needs to be kind of that captain, at the wheel.
Yeah.
Uh, but oftentimes this isn't about rewriting the playbook for them. This isn't about like infusing and force feeding a purpose into an organization where it just doesn't work. I think a lot of it is getting back to the roots of how and why they began, why they started. And
Agreed.
it's easy to lose sight of that, right? As you grow, as you scale, as you evolve as a company, an outside perspective often helps kind of recalibrate and helps you reconnect with that initial purpose. Why did we start this company? And I think if you ask any entrepreneur or founder out there, there was that burning desire to solve a problem, to prove something to themselves or others, um, to create a better method or model or product or service for a client, right? So it's just almost dusting it off. It's taking it off the bookshelf, dusting it
Yes.
off and saying, look, this is what has been here all along, but maybe a bit neglected. And how do we revitalize and refresh it and make it accessible for your business the way it stands today?
He talked about vulnerable conversations, making it safe to be vulnerable. And I'm sitting here asking myself, what is it about discussing purpose, discussing meaning that makes us feel so vulnerable? Because it does. We do.
Yeah.
There is something it's tender in that spot. And I'd like to know your thoughts. I have a few ideas myself, but I think it's important acknowledging that this can be a very emotional and psychologically challenging conversation to have with yourself or with other people.
Yeah, I think this is the most intimate part of ourselves, the core, our essence, what we feel, what we believe in. It's when you strip everything else away, all the window dressing, the social media, the fancy, office clothes, car, whatever it might
Mhm.
be, what really truly inspires you. And um, I think it's hard for a lot of people to kind of speak in that kind of vulnerable way because I think, especially in business, we kind of have this culture, this expectation you know, of strength and knowing all things and certainty and I think sometimes it's viewed as almost weakness to kind of get too emotional about something. And I don't think
Mhm.
this is leading with emotion, um, but it's kind of the fullest expression of your soul in a way. Not to get,
Oh no,
too
it's
you
beautiful.
know
Yeah.
yeah, and I like to call, I don't really use this a lot with clients because I think they'll probably kind of eye roll at me, but I'm like, your brand purpose is the soul of your brand, right?
Mhm.
Much like when we express something that is our purpose in life, that's something that's sometimes really hard to put into words, really hard, especially in a clear and concise and succinct way. And only with a lot of time and kind of tinkering can you get some clarity around it. Um, so yeah, I prefer to work with people that are totally game to get into as my former mentor would say, getting naked in the steam room. I think it's a really sort of weird way of saying it, but
It's
basically,
graphic. It's very
it's graphic,
graphic.
very graphic. He was like that kind of guy. But sort of no holds barred. Like we have nothing to hide from one another, and having this honest conversation.
Love it. I would venture to guess that in their essentials, the conversation about a business or a brand's purpose is no different than an individual's. It
Mhm.
gets stickier for us
Mhm.
because we tie the latter to identity, or what will people think of me. I also think we rob ourselves of joy there too by comparing. What if this is my purpose? Is it as good as someone else's? And being able to set that aside, um, that's a big deal in today's day and age. We do a lot of comparison in the modern world, but the fact that you have a purpose, that we are purpose made, if you will, um, that matters in and of itself. And whatever your purpose is, it does not detract from your intrinsic worth. And I think that's a thing for us, for those of us that want to come alongside leaders or business owners and say what matters is uncovering the purpose. it can be, to change the world, the make the world a better place, quote unquote, or it can be to help one person today, or it can be to make a living that lets me support my family. And those
Yeah.
are all noble and worthy. My lens is always that leader, people in leadership who are wanting to learn to be better. Leaders, when you try to identify what is the purpose of the work that you do, it can be big, but it doesn't have to be.
Sure.
And even the bite-sized purpose, if you will, the graspable, small daily purpose is inherently worthy and worthwhile for you to be able to identify because of what it means for, frankly, getting up the next day and going in and doing your job to the best of your ability. And then there's the big, what is the business doing and how are we branding and are we making those commitments? And I think we have to be able to see the big and the small scale in these conversations.
What I think, to your question earlier, what I think is sometimes a little bit daunting or intimidating about it, getting vulnerable, is there's an accountability to it. It holds you
Mm-hmm.
accountable by understanding and stating and trying to own your purpose. Then there's that expectation that, well, what are the decisions I'm going to make in my life? Just like we said for business, right?
Yes.
What are the business decisions we're going to make that align with our purpose? Well, what are the decisions I'm making today, tomorrow, big, small, in my life that I feel and hope will align with that greater purpose? And so it's kind of like setting a goal for yourself, right? New Year's resolution. I'm gonna
Mm.
lose 20 pounds this year. It's like, you put out that goal and then you kind of review it halfway through the year, and maybe you started that gym membership and it's like, okay, where did that go? So I think sometimes it can be a little scary, especially for something with this sort of gravitas, to say, this is my life, this is my purpose. Okay. But understanding it, like I said, it's malleable, it changes, it evolves with you. It doesn't need to be this thing that hangs over your head. But I think for those that are struggling at a point of their life and their career, maybe not truly fulfilled and seeking that kind of clarity of what they could or should be doing, that's a tough question to ask, because once they start digging that deep, then it becomes, all right, well, what am I prepared to do about it?
Mm. Yes.
What am I prepared to sacrifice in some cases in pursuit of my purpose? Job security, steady salary, uh, certainty over what I'm going to get up and do tomorrow morning. And that stuff is scary for any of us.
I really like bringing in the subject of accountability to this discussion. I'm one of those rare people that thinks accountability is not a dirty word, that it's actually a great thing that we should talk about more, particularly when it comes to the workplace and leadership. And I like it here because what all this research around great places to work and employee engagement, um, all of that, it tells us that spotlighting the purpose is so important to the employee experience. And when we are clear about the purpose of the work, that means that we have a responsibility then, leaders, to get really clear about expectations. And that is the first step toward an accountable work relationship, is what is it that we expect? And leaders, if you can always tie those expectations back to the work and the purpose, a large part of your job becomes kind of smooth sailing. And you're fulfilling an essential need that your employees have, to know what's expected of them and to know their work matters. So purpose becomes this translator for everything. It's kind of the universal translator for everything that you do in the workplace. Because if we're here to do X, that means that we do these things, that we talk about the work this way, that we have these timelines and policies. And if you're constantly linking it back, just the solid fabric of the way you do business, it's like, how can you go wrong? Right.
Even and in spite of a difficult quarter, a down
Mm-hmm.
economy, loss of revenue, change of leadership. I mean, everything you're saying is absolutely spot on, and yet the courage and accountability is really shown with those leaders and those organizations that stay the course in spite of challenges that are inevitable, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we see, I think, a breakdown in trust with a lot of these organizations and brands that espouse this lofty, good intention, well-sounding sort of purpose and mission statement. And yet, if you really kind of scratch beneath the surface or ask people within the organization even what that purpose is, or if it feels like that's being heeded, um, I think you'll find more often than not that it's a little bit of lip service.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and and that's tough. I've seen organizations try to lean in on a campaign. We do a lot of brand storytelling at our agency. So we work with brands and helping them tell their stories through documentaries and short form content and all these different wonderful things. And the beauty about this is that it's not about them. It's not about the brand. The brand is not like we think about it in terms of product placement. The brand is almost invisible and agnostic in some of these stories. It's telling stories about people in lives that are impacted or affected or aligned stakeholders, right? Or people in the community that are, potentially affected or recipients of this so-called mission of the brand, right? Whether it's 3M doing a series profiling trailblazing women in STEM, right? And
Mm.
trying to bridge the gender gap in STEM, or Neutrogena trying to kind of create more awareness around skin cancer for minority communities, whatever it might be. It takes a lot of courage to produce and invest in content that this is not an ad for your brand. This is not a product placement thing. It's nearly invisible. And so kudos, bravo, amazing. This is a great step in the right direction about making good on that purpose. And yet, and I'm not singling out any brand or name, but I have seen many of these campaigns, initiatives completely cease or take a 180 simply on a quarter to quarter basis based off of quarterly earnings,
Okay.
budgetary allotment, revenue, just shifting priorities, incoming, new leadership or CMO. And so that's tough. That's tough to build true brand equity when this is a seasonal and convenient endeavor for you.
Yeah. Well, nothing tells you priorities more than a budget sheet,
Yeah, amen.
right? And that can be money, but it can also be how we're spending our time, where our
Yeah,
energy and our efforts go. I mean, so if you're trying to understand what are my priorities, what do I think my purpose is, where are you spending your time? Where's your effort? And companies, brands, um, if you say this matters, but there's no investment in it, it may not actually be the case. So, what are you
or
trying
just
to get out of claiming this purpose?
Yeah, or just a vanity investment or checking of the box. I mean,
Yeah.
um, and look, again, I don't want to focus on the negatives of it. I think the fact that we're even having this conversation, that this gets to be a topic of a podcast, is a
Right.
pretty incredible thing and pretty incredible time. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly not in even my parents' generation, let alone my grandparents' generation. I mean, most people, and still a lot of people today, you show up to do a job because it pays the bills and you don't ask questions, and that will suffice. I think I don't want to say spoiled, but I think in a way we're lucky to be able to even have the option to
Yeah.
think bigger and pursue something different that means something more to us.
Oh, it's definitely a privilege. It definitely
Yeah.
is. And, for my own part, you talked about our parents' generation. Well, actually, my father served in the military, so purpose was always part of it.
Yeah.
My mother worked in faith organizations for a large
Yeah.
part of her career. So,
I
you
see
know,
where it comes from.
it's actually like, okay, yeah, that was part of my upbringing. That
Yeah.
are you working for something that matters to you and can impact other people? And I know one of my very first management jobs was in a retail setting, and I left it because it lacked purpose for me. It's
Mm,
not that I have a problem with people shopping. I like shopping. I was working in a bookstore. Managing a bookstore is a pretty sweet retail job. And it was about sales, and that's not what I'm wired
Sure.
for. It kind of goes back to one of the things you said earlier, Chase, that it is so individual. Because for some of us, it's going to come easier if we've had that type of experience. And for other people, you may have never had the opportunity to
Right.
think along these lines, not
Right.
because you're bad or lazy or anything. It's the opportunity didn't present itself.
And I think that's what motivates me. That's the pursuit, is to try to make believers out of non-believers, or simply reveal something and a potential in someone that they never thought of for themselves before, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I, uh, sounds like had a little bit, certainly that model, and that
Yeah.
message kind of shared with us. My parents, my mother worked in corporate America for 40 years, and I don't remember a day that went by that she didn't honestly but graciously say, this is not what I was meant to do.
Mm.
Um, I'm not, content in this job. I wish I would have done, X, Y, Z, whatever it might be. And, she would say to myself and my brother, do what you love. Whatever you can, find what makes you happy and do what you love. And that was as simple and as kind of broad as it needed to be. And I think that like stuck in the back of my head, and
Yeah.
probably why a lot of the traditional corporate environments and jobs weren't quite a fit for me, because that wasn't something that I felt was truly fulfilling and in line with my purpose. Even before I, figured out what my purpose might be, it just didn't feel right. And so I think it's a double-edged sword. It sends us on
Mm-hmm.
our own way, and somewhat stubbornly, into finding and paving our own path. Um, but that can sometimes be a little bit of a lonely and isolating path, and it can be a non-conventional path, and it can not have all the steps mapped out for us, and the job security and the certainty. But um, you know,
Yeah. Tell
it's
me about that.
right. Um, and that's why I think whether people listening or just that hear us talking about these things, you're going to get people that do an eye roll, like a hard eye roll, like, ugh, this purpose talk again, right?
Yeah.
This woke purpose talk. But look, strip all the, you know, cultural, political, you know, assumptions away from it. It just comes down to like, well, what would life be like if you could really truly figure out what makes you happy and gives you joy, and pursue that and do more of it each and
Yeah.
every day?
Yeah.
Like, who wouldn't want that? So I get it. It's tough to take into account when I'm running a business. I'm not running a charity. Yes, but guess what? And the research and the data does not lie. Purpose-driven brands perform exponentially better than those that are not, aligning and
Yeah.
heeding that purpose. People want to work for, buy from, invest in purpose-driven brands. So if you can have both, why not go for it?
100%. And that translates, I think, probably like letter for letter over to what it means for people in the workplace too. That when they understand purpose, when it is constantly highlighted for them, when the bright lines between every task that I do and the purpose of the work that we do together, the level of engagement, psychological safety, productivity, the bottom line impact for that is so clear. There are so many studies that tell us this. You see it in marketing and you see it in the workplace as well. We crave that deeper meaning in all of our interactions, is what it turns out to be, whether it's my work, my coworkers, or where I spend my money. We want to know things matter. And how wonderful to be able to answer, yes, this does matter to people. That I think should be a driving force for us in and of itself, to be able to answer yes to that question for others. One of the articles that I read and shared, getting ready for today, it's another piece that comes from Great Places to Work. the
Mhm.
company that does the Great Place to Work awards, but also has done so much research into great work environments and employee engagement and leadership roles. And they provide some guidance around what frontline managers can do to amp it up in the workplace. And what it really comes down to, and I think this is no surprise to anyone, it's methods of communication. It's
Hmm.
getting great at communicating through a couple of different ways in order to make certain people understand and see purpose in the work. And it's storytelling, feedback, and advocacy. And when I love thinking about advocacy as a communication form, but and kind of around these, that's what are the stories that we tell? Are we using the events in our shared work experience to constantly highlight, to spotlight, to put center stage our why, the meaning of our work? Are we able to deliver feedback across all levels? Is it safe? Are people responsive to it? Can you ask questions? Am I giving feedback as a leader that aligns with why we're here? And then advocacy. Leaders, are you ensuring that people have what they need to do the work so that it's kind of the your budget sheet is showing this really is what matters to us. We're putting the resources here or there, or we're realigning to ensure that the purpose is always supported. So, one, Chase, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But two, because storytelling is top of that list, I think it could be a lot of fun for us and hopefully valuable for listeners for us to talk about what storytelling can look like when we're talking about purpose.
Mhm. Um, yeah, look, I think that purpose in organizations is certainly paramount. I think we've seen, whether it's this wave of great resignation or quiet quitting or all these different kind of cultural signals that are basically people waking up and saying, you know what, I need and want something more. And what I think is certainly brave and courageous is that people are willing to forego a higher salary or comp or paycheck for a job that gives them more of that purpose, that aligns with their values. Like you said, they want to work for and will work harder and more honestly and more innovatively and creatively and collaboratively for these organizations. And so, when if you're leadership and you're trying to kind of, not that you should have to, but make the case, the business case for purpose. And I have like a whole like white paper I did on it that shows these statistics because, okay, great. If you're not willing to kind of take it at just the sentiment value and kind of strategic value, then here is the actual data and numbers that support the business case and how purpose drives business growth. Um, think about how do you reduce employee turnover and increase retention and increase innovation and engagement, things that are costing companies billions of dollars a year. And so, if something as simple as purpose and good communication and storytelling, which doesn't cost much within an organization, can help stem the tide and curb that sort of employee malaise and dissatisfaction, like, wouldn't you want to spend a little bit of time and energy into that? Um, it's interesting you bring up storytelling. One of my clients is a podcaster in a podcast studio. They started with a podcast, just a single podcast, speaking about their experiences, their journey to sobriety. And it kind of evolved into kind of really an overall sort of wellness sort of approach to living life. And as they call it, kind of in gray area drinkers. Doesn't mean you have to be kind of, sober, but just being mindful and conscious about what you put into your body and how you live your life and all these different things, right? So a very purpose driven subject and format for this particular person. Um, and by being authentic and a good storyteller, was able to expand upon this single podcast into building an entire podcast studio, where now the goal and mission is to help inspire and empower others to tell their stories, right? To have magnify and amplify their impact. And so, that's kind of a great lesson in terms of taking something small and intimate and but very purpose driven, and how it can kind of build a great community and support that allows your business to grow from that. But I bring this up because, I mean, look, podcasting is, you know, it's a great medium. It's what we're doing right now, but it's also becoming a little bit more crowded and congested. Just because you
Hmm.
can doesn't mean you should. But what's an interesting angle that we're taking is we're now speaking with, you know, our focus is more on B2B and businesses and organizations, and how podcasting, really just storytelling, right? Podcasting is the format. Storytelling can enhance internal communications for the
Yep.
exact reason that you just described, right? For the exact reason of allowing leaders and all levels of employees and stakeholders and managers to have a more open and honest an authentic conversation. We looked at some of the Glassdoor ratings and some of these leaders that, good humans, good people, but we're getting a pretty terrible score on Glassdoor
Mm.
rated by their, people. And it's like, look, if you're simply willing to kind of, again, be a little more vulnerable, be open to communication, convey the purpose, the vision for the company, etc. Imagine what it could do to reinvigorate and inspire your team and your organization. Doesn't cost much, doesn't take a ton of time. It's just simply getting real with your people.
Oh, I can't say enough about the power of storytelling in any setting, frankly, but particularly in terms of workplace and leading people in ways that are engaging and effective. Storytelling gives you the power to align folks, to recognize them, to validate good behaviors, to correct things that aren't in alignment, um, to share knowledge, both individual and, you know, that tacit and tribal knowledge as well. And it's so egalitarian as well. Anyone can bring a story into that shared space at the end of the day if you're doing things right. So everyone has a part to play, and it just going down the line, it answers so many needs that we have in those professional settings as employees, but also as people trying to get results too.
Yeah.
And if you are connecting your stories to why we're all here and why what we do matters, that formula, it's unstoppable. And I think I've said that before, but that's, I think, the power of this and why we need to be concerned with it is when purpose is just explicitly present in every aspect of that working environment, the relationships, and the way we go about doing the work. Success is just sure to follow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there may be environmental factors and other things, but if you put the effort there, you've done everything you can. So you mentioned a white paper that you wrote, and I think this came from a blog post. You posted about purpose-driven life. And just like Great Places to Work had some guidance for frontline leaders, you offered some guidance for how to make our lives led by purpose. I'm not going to go through those per se, but I would love if you could kind of summarize that and just give us an opportunity to talk a little bit about what some of those practices or mindsets are.
I do think a big part of, finding this piece, this passion, this purpose that helps guide you, it takes a degree of discipline and consistency. It doesn't take days off, right? We talked about like with a business. For me, I try to start every day with a meditation or a mantra or a gratitude, and I do that with my kids as well to kind of get me in the right state and frame of mind to prime myself for the day. Another sort of mantra I love is, trust the process. is, and this is kind of goes back to the Stoics philosophy, right? No
Mm-hmm.
matter what's going on in your environment, your external circumstances, stuff will happen, stuff will come up that tests you and tests your will. But how do you respond to that? How do you kind of keep a steady hand, and remain consistent through that process and through that experience? Um, and again, a purpose-driven life, I think also just for me really comes down to how do I align that purpose, like we talked about earlier, both personally and professionally, right? So they're not two completely different things.
Yeah.
How do I get as close as I possibly can to doing in my day-to-day sort of work and professional life that honors my personal purpose and fulfillment? I think that's really a fabulous pursuit if you can get it. I think you absolutely need to have boundaries between work and life, right? And I'm certainly working on that and learning that. But when you can do something that allows you to put food on the table, that allows you to help others, that allows you to do the work that you feel you were meant to do and really thrive in, that's just an awesome way to spend your day. So, those are just kind of a few things that come to mind. I just believe in a pay it forward mentality, just like the way we're having this conversation right now. Um, I think always trying to keep an eye out for others,
Mm-hmm.
and where they're at in their journey and the highs and the lows. And when needed, offer some guidance, offer a hand. I think the biggest gift anyone can give another person is to be a good friend, or even better, a mentor.
Listening to you reflecting on what you've written, what I've read, what I've experienced personally, I keep coming back to this idea of alignment. It's what we can have happen in the workplace, but on a bigger scale. The metaphors I come up with on that are like when you have your wheels aligned. If your car is wobbly, you need that
Yeah.
because alignment means things are going to operate as intended. Or if you've ever been to a chiropractor, they talk about giving you an alignment, just getting all those kinks out so that you can function. And I think that is kind of the gift of purpose, what it gives you in your life, whether we're talking about a brand, whether we're talking about a workplace, a team understanding its purpose, or an individual, the gift of alignment in your life, of things operating as intended, having that opportunity to be your authentic self, true to what matters to you, to discover joy in almost anything that you do when it's aligned to what matters, to the meaning that you have, as well as the ease of decision making. It's just magnificent. How could we not want this for everyone we encounter? How can you not want people to experience alignment between their purpose and their life?
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. That's kind of a big reason inspires me to continue to the work that I do. I mean, look, my kind of unique approach to it and positioning for it is that it is and can and should be purpose driven, purpose
Mm-hmm.
led, right? And it doesn't end with simply kind of uncovering that with someone or a business. Um, it's how do we go forth and apply all of these different strategies and tools and tactics that are in alignment of that purpose, right?
Yeah.
Um, how do we enable you to do more of what you love? Ideally to earn more, and be more effective and efficient with your time, which I certainly believe behaviorally you can and will be when you're in that flow state, while also giving you back more time in your personal life to do the things you love. I don't believe it scale, grow at all costs. Right? We're kind of obsessed with this. How big, how much are you increasing, revenue and growth and size, year over year. Okay, well, at what cost? And that's not always the right model for everybody in their lives and what they're seeing. I've never sought to kind of build a huge agency or enterprise. I like the intimacy of working with kind of a smaller handful of quality clients. So I think one of the indicators for success is certainly how are you aligning and living your purpose in your everyday life and work? How are you able to profit and make a good living for yourself and your team within that premise and that model? And how are you giving back more time to yourself um, to do the things you love? Because we work to earn money so that we can have a nice life and
Yep.
and ideally spend more time with our family and our kids and our friends. So if you're just consumed about how much more I can earn and achieve, you're kind of forgetting the point of why you're doing it in the first place.
I agree. I'm one of my projects right now is I'm writing a workbook that guides people through the process of creating a personal vision.
Mm.
And I'm questioning right now if I need to amp up some of the reflections that do talk about purpose and beliefs. And today I think the answer is probably yes, for this very reason. If you're going to set a personal vision, whether that's for your home life or your work life, having a clear foundation of purpose beyond just what do I believe about the things in my life, but one step deeper,
Yeah.
my purpose is to do X. Um, I think that could be pretty valuable, but also really important to the overall process. This has me thinking naturally, kind of going back to the how do we uncover purpose
Mhm.
without putting ourselves into an existential crisis.
Sure. Yeah.
And there are there are a couple of things that have kind of come up a few times in our conversation that I think could be good practical takeaways for people. There's even if you're not in a challenging moment, you can reflect on the challenging moments in your life and think about what did I prioritize when I was faced with this challenge? Where did I have the pinch points? If I wasn't able to see family, how did that impact me? If I faced this really difficult decision, what made me struggle with it? Was it because it put my values at conflict? Because I'd have to choose to, move to an entirely different country? Whatever it is, evaluate those challenges in your life to see if you can find themes around this is what it would have been hard for me to let go, or I struggled during this because it brought this into question for me. Another thing that you've talked about a couple of times now that I think is really important is seeking out mentorship
Yeah.
as well. You don't have to do this alone. As deeply personal as it is, finding somebody that's been there before, whom you trust, is so valuable. Ask yourself those deep questions. What do I want? What do I enjoy? If time, money, and resources were not in question, what would I actually do with my day? Those types of things, and answer honestly.
Yeah.
Personal candor is going to be really important in that for you.
Yeah, I think a commitment to continue to explore and examine it. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't, you know, this isn't a one-time course, a one-time
Yeah,
initiative or worksheet you fill out or whatever it is. I think it's the start of a journey, right? It's the pursuit. There is no there, right? Oh, found the purpose.
yeah,
There it is. Got it. Um, I think that the almost just as important as
mm-hmm.
that discovery and that understanding and clarity of purpose is the consistent application of always examining, always kind of reflecting, always being open and willing to learn and to grow because it is going to evolve as you evolve as a person.
Mm-hmm.
To think it's a stagnant thing and you put it up on a bulletin board, I think it's a great barometer and reminder. Look back in a year and be like, "Huh, interesting." Um, you know, it's not to say it hasn't completely changed, but it's evolved. And I think that's different. You have to want to continue to dive back into that versus, okay, I'll give this a shot and I'll see how it works out. And all right, I completed it. I'm good. That's a
Yeah.
very different reality than a continuous, appetite to learn and evolve.
Well, we're talking about purpose as a living thing, that
Yeah.
there is a certain organic quality to it. And that means that because it is a living thing, we can have a relationship with our own purpose, if you
Yeah.
will. And just like any relationship, it's going to mature, it's going to change over time. Sometimes it'll be great, other times it may not be um, as solid and as fulfilling as you want it to be. It can be dissatisfying sometimes. But if we treat it like a relationship and invest the time in it, and we understand and appreciate it at each of its stages, it becomes one of the best things we can have.
That's a great analogy. It is a relationship.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a fabulous way to look at it. There's times where it'll kind of nag you to say, "Hey, remember me? You're not spending enough time and attention on me."
Yeah.
Um, but again, that goes back to the accountability thing, right?
Yes.
Relationships take work. They take accountability. They take responsibility and honesty and vulnerability, all those things.
Yeah. All the big E's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, thinking of purpose as something that you have an intimate relationship with, like a deeply personal relationship with, can be one of the most productive mindsets out there in this space. So that rather than like, I have to find it, I've got to be on this constant search for it, recognizing that it's there and you can relate to it and that it will ebb and flow. But it's a vital relationship for you to have in your life. And you just need to tend it like you would a friendship, a marriage, a partnership. Again, I think that is a wildly productive way to approach this.
Agreed. This is why this has been an enjoyable and fun and fluid conversation.
Yeah,
But obviously we love and geek out on this kind of stuff,
right.
and it's like, we want to here drink the Kool-Aid. Here's, spread the gospel,
Yeah.
as much as we can.
Hmm.
But I think it's for a selfless purpose, is not to like get on everybody on board the train. It's like a way to pay it forward, is a way like to say, hey, look, this is
Yeah.
something that's been life changing, career changing for myself. What would that look like for you?
There is a little bit of proselytizing that goes into it. When you find purpose for yourself, when you understand the power it can have in your life, you want other people to know about it. We had that moment. How can you not want this for everyone else? And that's the place that you can speak from, is here's what I know for myself. I know that personally, for me, for Kate, my purpose is to come alongside people and support them so they can lead better. That is, what I'm made for in so many ways. And your purpose is to help people find their purpose. So that's what we want to talk about with people. We've got to be careful not to always overwhelm them in that work.
Sure.
But if we want people to have it, we have to talk about it. So it's finding the right stories to tell, the right times and places for that communication, and kind of the right intensity as well to discuss it.
Yeah, I have to put a caveat. I will
Okay.
say it is a little bit self-serving, to evangelize, this perfect purpose and profit, do good, do well mantra, because selfishly, I want to work with the type of people that embrace and embody this. So
Yeah.
what I'm really trying to do here is help, set up and nurture and groom the type of people, businesses, leaders that I really want to work with.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time, unfortunately, in my career working with the opposite end of the spectrum, let's just say,
Yep.
not
Yeah.
nice people, not considerate or appreciative, or in-line people. So there's a good harmony when you can work alongside and with those sorts of folks,
Mhm.
that are value aligned.
Well, that's a question of alignment. There it is, right? Value aligned.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
This is also a way for us, when we focus on purpose, it's a way for us to self-select or create the opportunity for others to self-select away from the business, the working relationship,
Yeah.
the conversation, fill in the blank. It's another reason it can become so powerful so that we don't find ourselves in orbit with folks where our priorities, our values, our preferences don't match up. It can be self-serving in that respect. In fact,
Why not? I
yeah,
mean,
it
it,
kind of
it,
needs to be.
oh, yeah. I mean, look, the whole thing is, I think, look, I want to be able to look back in 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it might be. My kids will, hopefully be doing what they love, purpose
Hmm.
driven. But to look at a landscape that is certainly more representative of what we are both envisioning as a potential future, right? A
Yeah,
more conscious way of doing business, of honoring, the duality of do good and do well, of giving back, of honoring sort of a greater good beyond the bottom line. So that's just kind of a future state that I hope to see one day. You know, and if I can be even a small part of it, create a couple of converts along the way, I think
yeah.
that's certainly a win in my book.
I'm on board too. I think that's the way we want and need to go, where people are very clear about this is why what I do matters, and these are the passions that I bring into my work.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And we are so open about it that our choices are easy as well. I think if we can give that to ourselves, to our children, to the world at large, we're doing good stuff.
Well, kudos to you for this platform and these questions and putting an honest and necessary sort of spotlight on it for hopefully others to listen and start to kind of consider for themselves.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It's as I've said, it's part of what I'm here to do.
Hmm.
Right? And that's a wonderful feeling to know. That type of assurance is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Why wouldn't I want it for other people? Right?
yeah.
So I know that we are getting close to pickup time. Um, I want to be very respectful of your time, Chase. Do you have any kind of last thoughts, observations, anything you'd like to share as we wrap up?
Um, yeah, look, I think what obviously we've each shared our thoughts, our observations, our journey. But I think the most important thing to remember is that that looks different for everybody. This is not the one size fits all blueprint. This is not, you know, the ultimate model. I think that's something that I wish I kind of identified with earlier in my career.
Mm,
Starting my business, kind of accidental entrepreneur, to be honest with you, and learned um, by making a lot of mistakes and doing the best that I could and leading kind of with what I felt was the right decision in the right way. Um, but it was hard and it's been hard because I think a lot of the noise that we're surrounded by on social media and just the culture at large is that, being an entrepreneur, running your own business, walking your own path has to look and sound and feel a certain way, right?
yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure that goes with that. There's a lot of sort of self-comparison and imposter syndrome and all those kind of negative things that you tend to evaluate yourself against, whether it's it's right or not. But the noise, when you hear it enough and see it enough, um, can be suffocating. It can be isolating because you're like, wait a minute, I don't think or look or operate that way. Um, and that's been, an interesting journey. I've struggled with mental health issues, most of my life. And so learning to heed my own needs, emotionally, physically, mentally, pace doesn't that might not look and sound like everybody else, that's okay. But that's my path. And so I think that's something that I just want to make sure that everyone listening understands that there is no one right way to do it. I think you'll know when you connect with that purpose, right? But try to shut out the noise and figure out what works for you and your path.
I appreciate all of that, Chase. Both kind of the honesty and authenticity, but also some of those very important reminders to myself about not comparing, about recognizing, where does mental health come into the picture. And hopefully this isn't too strained, it isn't too overt, but I think in this context we can say accurately that pursuing your purpose, an understanding of your purpose, is a way to answer those questions, to still the voice of comparison, and to give yourself peace at times. Not that it's a cure for depression by any stretch, but if you can be assured that you are doing things that match your purpose, that have meaning for you, there's a calm that comes with that we don't get to experience very often. And it may not fix anxiety or depression or other forms of mental health, but it's certainly not going to cause harm.
It certainly allows you to become resilient in the face of adversity. Like you said, it's allowing to kind of learning to live with grace for yourself in your own journey, in your own path.
That's what we all need. We all deserve a little bit of grace. That is a perfect place to stop, sir.
Well, thank you for the time and the chat. It was wonderful.
Definitely. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate this topic. Love connecting with people that are doing the same work but different, if that makes sense.
I think it's important that we just kind of each can share our own experiences and trials and tribulations and all that. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chase.
Thank you so much.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a rating or review, or share it with others. You'll find Comfy Chairs updates and other thoughts on leadership and learning on Instagram at 123 Limited. That's ONE23 LTD.